Now there is a fight on, well, there's dozens of fights on every weekend. And then sometimes you've got the boxing as well. I think it's next week we've got Kovalev versus Ward. So looking forward to that. But mainly, let's get excited because the UFC finally got into New York. Put on a card that was billed to be historic, and it was. I mean, that was a fantastic card. I would be well up for the UFC just never going back to Las Vegas. I mean, obviously, they've probably got some kind of deal with the MGM. Or something like that. But yeah, New York's just a far better city to hold fights in, because who really wants to go to the desert and the only things you can do are watch dinner theatre and gamble away your money in an artificially lit room. Whereas if you go to New York, obviously you're in one of the cultural capitals of the world. You can go to Broadway and watch a terrible one-man show. Or watch the Book of Mormon like I did when I went to Broadway last. And I saw Bryan Cranston in a thing about LBJ, called All the Way, and I think they made that into a film now. And I love Bryan Cranston, but he was just chewing the scenery hard, just way over the top. He was clearly loving it, so good for him. But on to the fights. I think probably the best place to start is Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Those pronunciations may not be correct, but I'm going to stick to them, and you can correct me in the comments. Or you could go fuck yourself. Yeah, this fight got a few boos in the stadium, but to be honest, the crowd were fantastic for the most part, which is unusual for an event where people pay thousands and thousands of dollars for a seat. The crowd for Mayweather-Pacquiao, not great. Anyway, I often have a hard time getting excited for Jędrzejczyk's fights ahead of them. When I have to write something as a preview of Jędrzejczyk, I always just... I for some reason, I can't get into it. But as soon as the fight's happening, I'm so excited. And then after the fight, I'm like, I can't wait to tell everyone about this instead of telling them about the main event that everyone cares about. No, I will be getting onto that. But she's just remarkable. And where a lot of women's MMA feels 10 years behind the men's game, you know, you've still got people going for head and arm throws and shit like that all the time, you know, which is a good surprise or a neat trick if you've got world-class judo. But you know, everyone's going for it, and it's not like world-class judoka, it's just random people attempting these head and arm throws, and the striking is generally not great. And, you know, Angela Magana was in the UFC, I think she's still in the UFC, isn't she? But she's, you know, she was never cut from the UFC, despite having never won a professional fight since 2011. So, in many ways, it feels like the women's divisions are about 10 years behind the men's. But Joanna Jędrzejczyk is a fighter who every champion in any division, every fighter in every division could learn a great deal from watching. She's the perfect champion on paper. Not everyone can be Conor McGregor, and frankly, if everyone tried, it would get really tiring. Hint, everyone is trying at the moment, and it is getting really tiring. But that's more his outside of the ring persona. You know, Joanna Jędrzejczyk does so much stuff that even the top men's fighters could learn from. Countering with the elbow on the way in, there was a beautiful... Well, she got clipped while trying to counter with an elbow later on, but there was a beautiful one along the fence where Kowalkiewicz had been trying to get into inside position and get her head underneath Jędrzejczyk's, and because she was coming in so head forward, trying to get underhooks or something advantageous, Jędrzejczyk saw the clean opportunity to just get off the elbow, so she lands this intercepting right elbow into a left hook, into a right low kick, angling offline, and breaks off the fence. Just beautiful. Last week we spoke about Jędrzejczyk backtracking and kicking, and how hard that is, and how she is one of the very few in MMA who does it well. Because obviously you can't kick while retreating, you can fade back and then kick, or you can retreat and then kick, but you have to be on one leg to kick. There's no way around that. You can't physically continue your retreat business as normal while kicking. Whereas you can sort of throw punches while backing up. They just rely on the opponent running onto them if you want them to work. But throughout the entire fight, she was just backing up and landing these chopping low kicks whenever Kowalkiewicz stepped forward. And I think it helped that Kowalkiewicz uses a quite long stance. But just some of those kicks were beautiful. Kowalkiewicz was switching stances a lot, and Jędrzejczyk was using the step-up lead leg outside low kick. So her left leg should step up and kick into the back of Kowalkiewicz's right leg when Kowalkiewicz was standing southpaw. Really useful technique. Don't really see it enough in MMA. Guys focus, and we're going to talk about this on the main event and a couple of other fights. Guys see that lead leg to lead leg matchup in a southpaw versus orthodox engagement, open guard, open stance, whatever you want to call it. And they think, okay, I'm going to start punting that leg. But a lot of the time that leg will be turned slightly in, and you kick in the front of the shin and the knee, and it can all go tits up very fast, even if the guy's not checking the kick. Whereas, if they're standing with their front foot sort of toed in, they're more likely to stand with their front foot toed in than their front foot toed out. It's just more conducive to fast in and out movement. But if they're standing with their front foot a little bit toed in and you kick them in the back of the leg, you can buckle their stance, or you can just really hurt them. It's a great way to mess up your ACL. In fact, that was one of the best techniques that Jerome Labanna used to use a lot. He was a southpaw, and he'd step up with his left leg and kick with his right leg, his lead leg, into the back of the opponent's lead leg. Buckled Mike Bernardo's leg with that. Fantastic technique. Another great thing that Joanna was doing, she was landing body kicks even on the retreat, even coming out of clinches backwards. She'd push away on Carolina's face and throw a body kick immediately, jumping into it. So she was pivoting on the lead leg, on the standing leg faster. Very Muay Thai stuff, but very cool. And just a great thing to do. If you can kick the opponent's body anytime, that's brilliant. If you're confident enough that you won't get taken down off of it, might as well go for it. Takedown defense, as always, was bang on point for Joanna. Something she does a lot when she gets to the cage, which I really like, I wrote about this in my article, and I think I mentioned it last week, is the right straight to the body along the fence. People square up when they start getting pressed towards the fence. As their back foot hits that fence and they want to move back a little bit more, they start retreating into their stance and squaring up. And that's a brilliant time to land right straight to the body, which can be hard out in the open. I mean, it's a fantastic technique for boxers who can move very well light-footedly, but when you've got that bigger distance because of the kicking game, it's quite hard to land the right straight out in the open. Unless you're Badr Hari and you're 6'4", then it can open all sorts of doors for you coming back up with the left hook or left uppercut. But for a normal fighter, along the fence is a fantastic place to land that right straight, which wouldn't normally be such an issue, and can really win guys. The body jab is enough to annoy guys into dropping their hands, and you've seen Junior Dos Santos tire guys with it. The average person can probably throw their right hand almost as hard as Junior Dos Santos jabs with his body jab. So if you can, you might as well. And any attack on the body is an investment for later anyway. Jędrzejczyk does it a lot, and you'll notice in the co-main event, Stephen Thompson was doing it too, along the fence. I would really love to see more guys use this. It's fantastic. And of course, you can build off it later, but even as a pot shot on its own, it's very valuable. It was Jędrzejczyk who got caught for the same thing that I thought Karolina would get caught with. In fact, Karolina, in all of her fights, you can see her throw her right hand, square up, drop her left hand, and get caught with a counter right hand. It happens a lot. But it didn't happen that much this fight. It just shows that even a very skilled striker has things that they prefer to go to, where a more adaptive fighter could have really used that. It's not really one of Joanna's main things, so she was busy doing other stuff. But when she did go to counter with the right elbow, she got clipped in the head with the right straight, and it was her that suffered from the low left hand and the squaring up. So that was an interesting turn of events, but she was so cool under fire. The mark of a really good striker, and I wrote this in something I was writing on Conor McGregor, I think it was last week. The mark of a good striker is, panic wrestling, basically. If you watch, there was a great interview with Muhammad Ali years and years ago, where he was being shown some footage of Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling, and he was saying, I'm the greatest, look at Joe Louis, he doesn't even know to tie up when he's hurt. And that's a really important part of being a great striker, knowing when to tie up. And, in MMA, a lot of great strikers, that part of their game is completely removed. They can't do that. If you watch Floyd Mayweather, he clinches all the time. If he doesn't like the look of an exchange, or he feels a little bit out of position, or he lands a hard punch of his own and he doesn't want to give the opponent time to respond, he'll tie up. There's this big panic wrestler thing, but it's the right thing to do. You want to slow the guy down. So Jędrzejczyk gets put against the fence, and then she immediately shucks to the back. It was absolutely beautiful. In fact, I've got a question about Muay Thai clinch this week. I might not read it out. No, I'll read it out anyway, and I'll refer back to this mention now. But the Muay Thai attitude to the clinch is about shucking out under the opponent's arms, looking to get to the side and throw knees while they're turning back towards you and things like that. And she was doing that, you know, you see it in Muay Thai when they've got like a single collar tie each, and the one guy will get underneath the other guy's elbow, push it over, and step out to the side, and then try and switch feet and land a knee to the solar plexus or an elbow across the top with the free hand. Joanna was doing that, and then she was also threatening the back as well. So that's where the Thai aspect of the clinch and the traditional wrestling aspect of the clinch becomes so interesting when you begin playing them off against each other, or using them in tandem rather, which is going to be a theme this episode. So I thought a very brave performance by Karolina, because I'd been fairly skeptical of her chances before coming into this. I didn't think she was going to get knocked out outright, because Joanna doesn't really knock out a lot of people. She really is an attrition-based striker. But I'd watched Karolina's 3 fights in the UFC, and it seemed like the 2 selling points were that 1, she was tough, and 2, she did that cute thing where she stands in the corner with her feet crossed, even when she's like in the middle of a really hard fight. But she impressed me, not so much with her ability, but with her gutsiness, and the fact that she wasn't like, she was getting outpointed and hurt a bit, but she wasn't trying to survive. She was just looking for opportunities that weren't really coming. Another cool thing Joanna did was the broomstick, when you've got your opponent's back and you insert one of your hooks, but you don't put it in like to take the back, you put it all the way across to the opponent's other leg and you straighten it out and sit down. Great way to drag guys to the floor. Ben Askren favourite. Been seeing it more and more in recent events, actually. Just a really cool little thing that I like, and I spotted it more because I like it, you know. And Joanna did that when she was hurt and managed to get the fight to the ground and keep a hold and recover her wits. Her face was messed up by the end, though. She took a punch on the nose that made it swell to like twice its normal size, and then I don't know what she got clipped with on the side of the head, but her right eye, it looked like it was cut, but it wasn't. I missed a good bit of the fight because I wasn't really looking at the action. I was looking at what on earth is sticking out of Joanna's face. Some nasty swellings on both of them in that one. I'm surprised that with the number of elbows that Joanna was looking for, she wasn't able to open Karolina up. Because, fair-skinned people tend to cut more. And especially Russians and people from that sort of area, tend to cut more easily. Not a racist statement, just a generalization of one of those old boxing laws, which is like part old wives' tale, and then they do the science around it, and they're like, oh, that's quite interesting. Ferdy Pacheco famously thought that the amount of melanin in your skin affected how easily you were cut. But talking of cuts, that takes us on to the co-main event, Stephen Thompson versus Tyron Woodley. This one was an interesting one because it got scored a draw, which everyone hates. Even the participants hate that. Because it's like the guy who was the champion retains the belt but doesn't feel like it was a win, on paper, which is a bit harsh. But that was one where the opening round was all Woodley, and then you got 2 good rounds out of Wonderboy, and then the 4th round was just Woodley almost finishing him several times, and then the 5th round was back to Wonderboy being on top of it. Really, really good fight. Wonderboy working far more from his orthodox stance than I'd seen him in the past, and it was interesting because previously I thought, what I'd seen of him from the orthodox stance was mostly that moneymaker, the 1-2, and then the high kick, and round kicks to the body and the legs. And actually, it turns out that he's more got like 2 different styles of karate, one from each stance. The left leg stance, he gets up on the ball of his back foot and he likes to burst with his punches, driving off that back leg, which is more like a Shotokan style karate. Whereas with his right leg forward, he fights more like the Bill Wallace early days of kickboxing, American kickboxing style karate, which I thought was really interesting. But very early on, a couple of tactical errors really cost him severely. We've seen Wonderboy be such a problem to wrestlers by being so long, managing the distance so beautifully, and using linear kicks and techniques like that. And I said I would love to see him focus more on the low-line side kick, because that's the one you can really pick at people with, by slamming that side kick into the front of their knee. And I said he almost seems like one of those people who feels like it's classless to do that, which is a weird thing to do in professional fighting. But there are people out there who don't like using them, specifically because they feel they're dirty. But yeah, the first takedown came when Thompson threw a long round kick to the leg, and it got caught and rode up, or the other way around, and he immediately got taken down. That's the danger with those low kicks against good wrestlers. You're giving them the chance to step inside it. And then he spent most of the first round on the mat, getting beaten up. Did a really nice little off balance. He got his knee through heading back from half guard to full guard, and he managed to tilt Woodley so that he went back the other way and had to put his arms down, and then he was back in full guard. But in that unbalancing, his hands weren't up by his head. He wasn't protecting himself, and he just caught this little elbow, and it cut him wide open. It's amazing because he'd taken some really big ones up to then, and it just really makes clear how random it is when you get cut, what cuts you. Woodley was using what I jokingly call the Dagestani backstep, which in a ringcraft sense is quite dangerous. You're putting yourself on the fence with your back to it, and if you plan on shooting off the fence, as Rustam Kabalov and Ali Bagautinov do fairly regularly, you can eat knees on the way in. But yeah, Woodley stood there, and it was like Thompson didn't really feel comfortable if the guy wasn't moving at him, so he threw that low kick, got taken down. Second round, third round, much better for Thompson, really doing lovely work, especially out of the left stance, pulling away and throwing the right hand counter. Remembering to get out of the way afterwards. And then on the subject of tactical errors, Woodley caught him with a beautiful right hand coming across the floor, and then he caught him with another one, put him down really badly, and it looked like he was on the verge of being TKO'd. And then Woodley grabs a guillotine and holds it for ages, which is... You'll recall when Tito Ortiz fought Ryan Bader, he clipped him, hurt him, and then jumped on a guillotine. And at the time, everyone said, "Oh, what an old school move." That was very, that's something you see out of a veteran. You have to have extreme confidence to go to your back with a guillotine like that. And in this fight, you saw the reason that typically most high-level gyms have gravitated towards advising against that. Because if you grab the guillotine on the guy and you can't finish it, you might be tiring him out, but he's got his head back together. He's only going to be dazed so long. And while Stephen Thompson was in great danger of being finished with that guillotine, he did use the time to recover. And, perhaps if Tyron Woodley had stayed off him and kept trying to load up on punches, he might have been able to finish him. But that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, as a fight fan, that was incredible, Thompson trying to get his head out, and then Woodley was trying to switch grips from over the arm to no arm guillotine, so trying to get his hand in front of the chest of Thompson, and Thompson kept digging his arm back through so that he was ensuring that the choke was arm in, because for the layman in the audience, finishing the arm in guillotine is a little bit harder than finishing an arm out guillotine on the neck, because you're trying to close a space and they've got their shoulder in the way of it. Typically, you have to sit up for an arm-in guillotine, and you have to try and gooseneck so that your wrist's right on their larynx. But for a no-arm guillotine, you're just trying to get the forearm across the throat. Great fight. If they want to do the rematch, I'll watch it again. But it sucks for Damian Maia because he was, it was him and him and Thompson were both sort of due a title shot, and now Maia's going to have to sit around and wait. Well. Main event, Eddie Alvarez versus Conor McGregor. Rough one for Eddie. I mean, in terms of stylistic matchups, this was always going to be a hard one because he is a fighter who does a lot of his work with his hands. He was giving up reach and height to McGregor, about 5 inches of reach plus height, so a long bit of range. And we talked about double rights last week. He was trying them. The problem with the double right is that, like the double jab, if you're just like trying to get in and punch on both, you can end up exposing yourself just as much as you would for a regular punch. It's really double rights like Julio Cesar Chavez style. We're talking like flicking it out twice and making sure that it comes back, and you're staying on top of your feet and you're staying in your guard and you're expecting the counter to come back in between. The point of the double right we were talking about last week when we were talking about it as a possibility is that McGregor's going to go back and try and counter on the first one, so you throw something non-committal so that you're ready for it to come back. But a couple of occasions he goes for the right straight to the right hook, and in between the two he gets clipped with the left hand backstep counter. That counter is just working so well. Loads of stuff I noticed about McGregor in this fight. I mean, watching it was a bit of a blowout. He was in control the whole time, but really got to see more of his habits in action. I'm really looking forward to writing a Killing the King McGregor, which I can do when he actually defends a title. It's been sort of hard to frame that as a Killing the King when he's challenging for the lightweight belt. But But I'm really looking forward to writing that because I've got. I don't want to be a dick and tease you too much with this, but there's some interesting stuff that I noticed about him. I think definitely he talked afterwards about attributes, but I think definitely as a smaller fighter, you don't want to be standing on the cage. You want to try and get on him quicker. And I think one of the main ways to do that is to cover up rather than to try. He enjoys guys trying to reach for him and trying to run in on him, and it just doesn't work when he's got that left counter. Because he's not like the counter lands in a different place every time. It's like sometimes temple, sometimes jawline, whatever. Sometimes on the forehead, and it still does the damage because the guy's reaching for him, like Chad Mendes. But he's punching into an opening. He's not punching for a specific target. The opening is that when the guy throws his right hand and it falls short, it comes back to guard slowly. And guys are very uncomfortable with punches coming from that side in that way anyway, because it's an unusual stance matchup. But really, just not offering that opening seems to be the best way to get in on him. Nate Diaz did that when he was tired of getting countered as he was reaching with jabs. He realized that if he just put his guard up and walked in, McGregor would throw stuff, it wouldn't land as clean, and then they'd be in an exchange afterwards. I mean, anyone fighting McGregor knows that denying that counter is the most important thing now. I'd love to see more right kicks to the body, actually. Kicks are always going to be the longer weapon than the punches, especially if you're both the same height, but for a shorter man, you can make that sort of work. And it makes it easier to stay on your guard and make sure your shoulders and elbows are up. Won't go too much into the details of killing the king sort of stuff, but absolutely fantastic performance from McGregor. I wrote an article probably about 2 or 3 years ago called Conor McGregor is the Future of MMA. And I was talking more the interesting techniques he was bringing to the game, like that backstep left counter, and the fact that he was pushing forward in order to draw out a counter punch to counter the counter, which you still don't see enough in MMA. You still don't see it enough in high-level boxing and kickboxing. And the front snap kick and the wheel kick as a herding weapon, and the back kick as a herding weapon. But I wasn't expecting him to become a 2-division champion or anything like that. So that's pretty incredible. And the eyes that he's got on the sport, couldn't be more grateful for that. But to be honest, this week I was so bored of all the hype around the fight. It feels like, it's probably not the same if you're a casual fan, but it feels like every week I have to watch Conor McGregor and then someone pretending to be him, and then like 3 other people also trying to be him. But it's tough. I mean, he's found the secret to selling a lot of tickets and pay-per-views, and everyone wants to copy that. But apparently D is expecting a baby, and he's going to take some downtime, so good for him. I think he's in a very interesting position because the UFC didn't want anyone to hold 2 titles for a long time because you headline your pay-per-views with title holders. If you've got 2 titles on one guy, that holds up 2 divisions, and he's only going to defend 1 belt at a time. Unless, if he defends the belt against Frankie Edgar or Jose Aldo, can they insist that the higher belt is also on the line? It's a weird thing. But now he's in the position where he can sort of call his own fights, the Mayweather-style position. And that's not to say that he'll duck anyone, but the interesting thing about letting him have the title shot, almost off the bat, is that guys have to prove a consistency in a division to earn a title shot, usually. And really, we haven't seen a lot of McGregor at lightweight. We've seen him in 3 fights, and he went 2-1. And if a judge had seen it differently, the second Diaz fight, he could have been 1-2 at this point. But they probably wouldn't have given him the title shots anyway. But Eddie Alvarez is obviously interesting because, firstly, he is a guy who relies on his hands a lot, and secondly, he's a very short for a lightweight, generally. I mean, obviously, Frankie Edgar competed in that division, but you've got guys like Donald Cerrone was like a 6-footer in the lightweight division, and tons of guys who are 5'9" and above. And, of course, tons of wrestlers. So you're in the position now where Conor McGregor could just fight whoever he wants, and there are guys... Well, this is the nature with every sort of guy who gets built up as unbeatable. They're not unbeatable, they've just beaten some very, very good guys. No one's really unbeatable. There could be like the number 25th ranked in their division might just bring some weird stuff that matches up weirdly with them. But certainly whoever he's got next at lightweight is a tough fight, even if it's Nate Diaz, because they have that history, and Diaz, even doing the same thing he does in every fight, is a difficult fight for him. It was a weird choice to bury Habib on the undercard, with the implications of a win for him. But then I think they probably want Tony Ferguson to go first or do that Diaz rematch. But Habib was the star performer of the night for me. I was blown away. Not just because he was so dominant, but so interesting. What I love on the ground is interesting styles. This is why I love, if you've read the pieces I did on Minoru Suzuki, I love looking at his style just because it's so weird. Josh Barnett is another one. He's got that really interesting catch wrestling sort of style. One of my boys, and I am reliably informed he's a fan, which is quite nice. But then I do spend a lot of time just sort of shilling his work because he's just brilliant. But Khabib has this just so interesting on the ground. His passing style is strange. He likes to get into the knee shield and start pounding on guys, and then he'll stand up and try and push into like a knee slide on the far side. So if he's got his right leg trapped in the half guard, he'll push into them, stand up, and try and drive his right knee through over their left hip, which is kind of unusual. You mainly see guys try and stand up and recut with the knee cut recut. And then the other thing that he does tons of really interesting things. He seems to let guys get the underhook from half guard and then knee slide while they've got the underhook, which is really strange because it goes against everything that you learn when you're playing jiu-jitsu. You just don't want to give guys the underhook from there. Even John Jones doesn't let guys have the underhook. He'll make sure that either his hand is on their throat or he's got a cross face or his head's in between their head and him. Their head and his leg. But Khabib will let the guy underhook it and then pass half guard straight into the mounted crucifix. Rogan brought this up, but he's always trapping arms. It's crazy. He did a nice double knee ride, which reminded me so much of Minoru Suzuki and Josh Barnett that I had to mention them just now, which was knee on the throat and a knee on the belly. And immediately Johnson pushed him off, and then Khabib dropped his knee and got the mounted crucifix again. Just brilliant at trapping limbs, which is obviously so important in mixed martial arts because if you can trap a limb, you can use your other free limb. You're now one up on them in limbs, so you use a free limb to hit them. This is something that the Danaher Death Squad have been doing in EBI recently. Their back control system is all built around getting a leg on an arm, so that they've got both arms controlled and one arm free to work. If you want to see that, go watch Gordon Ryan in the one that he won, because he did tons of that stuff. And then there was this really weird position where Khabib would get a seatbelt, so he'd be gripping an arm around the back, and it would be like he was moving to the back, but then he wouldn't, and the guy, Johnson, would trap his leg, so that it was like back control with one hook in, but Khabib was on top, sort of in a mount, so he had his arm trapped behind his back. And then every time Johnson tried to get up, he'd just pull him back down. He'd just collapse that arm and then start hitting again. It was a really cool position, and he kept ending up there, and I just want to go back, and I've only watched it once now, but I'm going to go back and try and find out how he gets into that position so often. Very impressive. And he brutalized him from the half guard with the knee shield, and every time Johnson tried to get an underhook, he'd just crush him and pass. It'd be really interesting if Khabib was into the D'Arce game, because I feel like he could have some success with that. But obviously he prefers to stay on top and hit, and he hits well from the top. He's reminiscent of Fedor, where you got those wide arm punches that don't seem to be like a whole body punch, but still seem to hurt a lot, and move heads. I would have had no problem with John McCarthy stepping in and stopping it in the second when Johnson had just absorbed like 70 blows to the face and not done anything about it. There are people who get mad about the stoppages like BJ Penn versus Matt Hughes or Kimbo Slice Roy Nelson, where you get trapped in a mounted crucifix and they're not hitting with like all the force in the world. But if that fight went on forever, you wouldn't be able to get out of that position. So, it's one of those ones where it's almost like you have to stop it. Unless they give you the thumbs up, then it's all okay. The Uriah Faber guard. But yeah, standout performance of the night. But his striking looked so bizarre in the first round. And he was getting hit with long left hands too, which is not a good sign if you're going to fight McGregor next. One of the other things I was going to say about short people versus McGregor is that when he's counterpunching with his left hand, he's firing through the opening. When he's leading with his left hand, he tends to have to fastball it, try and sneak it between the guard, and he does that well. But he also throws himself forward and leans when he does it. He's a lot more off balance when he's leading with the left hand than when he's countering with the left hand, which is like a skip back, and he's upright and erect straight back when he's doing the counterpunch, but when he's throwing the punch off the bat, he tends to lean a lot, and that got him check hooked a lot by Nate Diaz. That's the main reason that I think, as a short man, or a person giving up reach and height to McGregor, or one or the other, giving up range to McGregor. We discussed that in week 1. Go back and watch it. But if you're giving up range to McGregor, probably best to try and get in on him. Just put up the guard, get in on him, because you don't want those fast balls coming down the middle of your guard. If you're a taller man fighting McGregor, or someone like of equal height and reach, might as well make him come to you, because he's going to have a harder time just relying on the speed to get that left hand through. And if you can draw him into those leans, he's a lot more counterable. Counterable? Is that a word? Available for a counter. But yeah, Johnson was connecting left hand straight through the guard, and Khabib does this thing where like he's the scariest guy in the division, but whenever a punch comes at him, he looks terrified. His eyes wide open, his chin's up in the air. He's doing this weird like stonewall guard thing that doesn't really look like it's convincing anyone. And then in the second round, he seemed to get his timing down, and he's got some nice combinations with his hands. He's just so uncomfortable looking, and looked very hittable early on. So that'll be really interesting. I mean, I really wanted that Donald Cerrone fight a while ago, because Donald Cerrone is so good from the guard and off his back, and could trouble Khabib with the striking. Would have been a really good test for Khabib. But I mean, this is the second biggest win of Khabib's career. He's always been terrifying, and he had that win over RDA, but he really hasn't fought a lot of top-level guys. And this was a huge statement, which is why I've prattled on about it for so long, because I just fucking loved it. What else happened? Weidman did a good job against Ramiro, I thought, for most of the fight. Oh god, Ramiro's trip. I mean, a trip generally, as a, you know, if you're breaking it down as a physics thing or a principle thing, you want to move the opponent's weight from over their legs to a position where they would have to step, but you have blocked their foot from stepping. As opposed to a sweep. We're talking like, you know, sweep is where you're getting their balance off their leg and then removing their legs out from under them. Whereas most of us would have to like walk and step and pull the guy around and then trip him. Ramiro seems to just be able to move guys with his hands and then trip while he's not even stepping. It was really cool trip. Moved immediately to the back afterwards like a cat. Need to start supplementing my taint, or tainting my supplements or whatever. Moving like that at 39 and looking like that at 39. There's good genetics, you know. You can understand why guys are suspicious of him. I've got a question about this week. We'll be doing that in a minute. But other cool fights. Miesha Tate retired. You know, good on her getting out while she's young and beloved. You know, the people seemed really on her side when she retired. Boech versus Natal, which looked kind of like a fight from 2012. Just not very high-level striking on display, but a knockout nonetheless. Vicente Luque, I can't even pronounce the name, but versus Bilal Muhammad. That was the left hook knockout. Something of Joe Frazier is left haunting the rafters of Madison Square Garden, because that was a beautiful left hook. And that was just an example of why I'm always saying trading punches with someone who's got a good left hook is, you know, dangerous. It's the king of the counters. If you've got a good left hook, you can cover up and throw it blind. And if the guy's in range and opening up, you've got a good chance of knocking him out. On the subject of great left hooks, Douglas Lima this weekend fought Koreshkov, the guy who, you know, brutalized Benson Henderson. Koreshkov kept trying to take him down because in the first fight he was able to very well. Lima, beautiful butterfly sweep from with an overhook, and he came up off that beautifully. BJ Penn did that a couple of times against Frankie Edgar, I think in their second fight. Overhooked butterfly guard, very cool position to use if you're good at it. Andre Galvao will start sweeping with the overhook butterfly guard, get up from his, you know, use his hand to get up, and then try and snap him down for the front headlock. A really cool little technique, which not a lot of guys can do, because not a lot of guys are top-level jiu-jitsu guard players and good at wrestling too. But yeah, Lima managed to stay off his back a good amount, and then eventually Koreshkov opened up, ate a counter left hook, fell to the floor. Lima looked so on point against Paul Daly, his left hook. He was timing the guy with the scariest left hook in the division. He was timing him so that when he squared up to start throwing it, he'd beat him to the punch with the left hook. It was really sweet. Both those lads are something to be looked at. Koreshkov and Lima, good fighters in a very busy division. Edgar versus Stevens, that was all about pace. Lovely stuff from Frankie Edgar. Jeremy Stevens, trouble cutting the ring, as always. Really nice little sequence at the end where Frankie Edgar came out of the clinch with an uppercut into a right straight. That was a favourite of Matt Lindland. He liked to, when he felt like the clinch was being, when the guy was sneaking out of the clinch, he'd try and throw the uppercut and then right straight, and then dig in the underhook with the punch that just used the right straight. So the uppercut stands them up, and then you fire the right straight to get their hand up, and then dive in under it for the underhook. Cool little sequence. And that'll cover us for the fights for this weekend, I reckon. So really good weekend of action. Amazing first event for New York. I'm sure that they probably broke the pay-per-view record. Their pay-per-view record's like 1.6 million, which is either Diaz versus McGregor or one of Brock Lesnar's fights. Just astonishing how this sport's coming along. Really great time to be involved. And what a treat that fight card was. Right, let's do some questions. Jack, with the recent development that Jones popped for a boner pill, can you do a breakdown of how the truly elite levels of MMA lead to erectile dysfunction in men? Also, on a less cynical note, what are your thoughts of the Thai clinch work in MMA? Personally, I feel it's underused, and Mighty Mouse looks so untouchable because when people are trying to wrestle him, he is beating them up with knees, and as soon as they adjust, he shoots on the hips, leading the exchanges even in the clinch. Also, can you speak to how effective you think the triangle choke is in MMA? From what I can see, 90% of the time people tap, it's out of habit, and when you really fight against it, it usually isn't effective enough to put people to sleep, excluding a very few truly elite BJJ players. Long-time lurker and fan of your work. All the best, Josh. Right, let's start at the top then. John Jones. Yeah, we're getting into deliberate naivety territory there. I was on a weight training forum the other day, and one of the top posts was, how can I get a body like Schwarzenegger without steroids? And there were genuinely people there, like long-time people who'd been in weight training and bodybuilding and things for a while, and they were insisting that it was possible under like freak circumstances if you have the right genetics. And I was just, it's not. Arnold Schwarzenegger had incredible genetics and steroids. Anyway, I will not cast aspersions on John Jones, but the boner pills in question, they tested 4 of them. All of them came back positive for a third substance called tamoxifen. John Jones's tests did not show any signs of tamoxifen. So that's a little bit questionable. On an unrelated note, were I a manager and one of my fighters to test positive, knowing what a shit show the American supplement industry is, I would go and buy as many supplements as possible and look for one tainted with the right substance, and then claim that my guy had been on it all along. But that's just me. I am sure that has not been the case for every other tainted supplement failure during the USADA era. Next question, triangle choke in MMA. Yeah, you don't see them as much anymore. I get this question a lot, actually. What happened to all the triangle chokes in MMA? Where did they go? I think partly it's because it is quite easy to lame people out from the guard. The triangle is a choke that's shut down just by knowing what you need to be doing all the time. 2 hands in or 2 hands out. Even with a really good guard player, a lot of the time you can just lame it out, put on the bicep ties, stall. I would say a lot of it is to do with a lack of setups. You're not going to hit a guy with a right straight off the bat unless he's bad. I don't think there are enough fighters who really chain their submissions and sweeps together well. You'll see the occasional one, like a Joe Lozon will hit a hip bump into the triangle. Beautiful combination from closed guard. GIF hits the front page of Reddit MMA every time because it's such a cool technique. But there's too many guys who are just looking to use the hand push triangle. The standard: get the collar tie, get the hand, push the hand, throw your leg over, try and lock up a triangle. And really, those don't work all that often unless the other guy is tired or making mistakes with his posture. There are some great resources available on the triangle. Ryan Hall's 2 sets on the triangle, the one that he did no gi and the one that he did in the gi, both amazing. Weirdly enough, he's become known as a leg lock guy, despite his 200 submissions in tournaments with the triangle choke. But yeah, that's a fantastic series on some setups and mechanics of the triangle generally. A lot of guys, there's a problem with getting the triangle, and then if you've got a sweaty dude in your guard, they can just shuck it off. Fedor made a career of just shucking off triangles, and he was doing it to guys as good as Big Nog. Once you get slippery, and then if you throw water all over yourself like your Romero did the other night, and then looked at the referee like, why? What did I do? When the guy was toweling him down. You can make it hard to maintain the threatening the triangle position. Once the choke's locked in, it's a little bit harder. And of course, slams make it a lot more difficult. The surprising number of guys who forget to grab the leg as soon as the opponent starts standing up to slam them. And the additional thing about the slam from inside the triangle is that it's essentially a legal jumping headbutt. Even the most famous slam knockout of all time, Quentin Jackson over Ricardo Arona, basically just a headbutt. Jackson gets up and he's got like big teeth marks in his forehead. Not to say it's not awesome though. But then slams from the guard also are an interesting one, because you're basically attacking the back of the opponent's head by slamming it onto the mat. Every other strike you can use to the back of the opponent's head is illegal, but if you slam him into the canvas, that's totally okay. Another great resource on the triangle choke is a book called Mastering Triangle Chokes by Neil Melanson. And Neil Melanson is a guy who sort of stays under the radar quite a lot. Apparently he doesn't get to compete or roll as much as he'd like to, because he has, I can't remember what it is, but it's a degenerative, I think it's nervous disorder of some kind, but he has some health issues that prevent him from training like really, really hard. But like from all accounts, he's incredible in the gym, and every piece of instructional material I've seen from him has been masterfully put together. He's got some really interesting setups, and that book is basically like 100 ways to get to the triangle position. Interestingly, a lot of the best triangles you see now come from top positions, or in sort of like a scramble where they take top position and then they know they're going to lose top position, so they swing the leg over and get the triangle. Who was it scored one the other day? Oh, I can't remember. But we all remember the Chael Sonnen Damien Maia one. That was fantastic, where Damien Maia hits like the lateral drop straight into the mount, but like a mounted triangle position. Marcelo Garcia, who's not famous for his triangles, finished, might have been Leo Vieira, can't remember who it was, but he won, I think it was his last ADCC title. He was using like the shoulder of justice pass into mount, but he jumped over the guy's near hand because the guy was trying to push his knee back down into the guard, and he jumped the guy's hand and landed in a mounted triangle and finished it from there, which was really cool. But then, of course, attempting triangles from the top means being comfortable going to your back, so they're also quite rare. So between the sweat and everyone knowing that standing to pass is far less likely to get you submitted, and the strikes and the ability to lame people out, and being able to just deadlift the guy off the floor and slam him, triangles have a hard time finishing in MMA, and there just aren't that many guys who practice them religiously. I mean, Paul Sass is a great example of a guy who did. He was happy to pull guard and attempt a triangle. I think Giofrida Pepe, whatever his name is, the guy who looks like Enzo Amore, he hit a jumping triangle along the fence, which was really cool. In fact, while we're on the subject of that, it was an overhook and wrist control, and Joanna Jędrzejczyk used that same position to pass the wrist control to the hand that was overhooking, so that she had both hands controlled by one hand, and land an elbow across the face with the other hand as Carolina tried to free her hand. That was a really cool position. John Jones used it against Daniel Cormier too. And there's some really old footage of Gentleman Jim Corbett showing exactly the same grip and using the free hand to punch. Pretty cool, I thought. But submissions in high-level MMA are just getting rarer anyway. I think it might be something to do with that new mode of thinking that doesn't like giving up position or getting stuck in any one position. Like Daniel Cormier and Cain Velasquez famously don't put the hooks in. They like to... They just like to ride the turtle and throw punches so that they can't, if you get on the back and then the other guy rolls so that you're underneath him on the back. Henry Akins did an interesting article about this, where the back is not just one position. Top of the back and underneath the back are two different positions, and one is significantly worse than the other. To be honest, nowadays, the most submissions you're seeing tend to be things like D'Arce chokes. The guillotine is still a popular one. It's mainly just getting on the neck in a scramble, and normally while wrestling. I think guys are probably too alert during guard play, or when you're in the closed guard, all you're thinking about is the triangle, and to a lesser extent the armbar. Whereas if you're in flux in a scramble, then there's more chance of hitting any sort of technique. Oh, and a tie clinch. Joanna was a fantastic example of this. There were a few moments where she was swinging Carolina around. Writing about Glory and occasionally K1, there is like a little group of Muay Thai elitists, and they can be really annoying. They'll just be like, oh, well, he competes in kickboxing because he can't, he doesn't like the clinch, he can't fight the real man's sport of Muay Thai. And then you're like, well, Muay Thai is clinch, but you're not allowed to follow up on the ground. So, we're all just working to our own specific set of rules. Matt Brown is a fantastic example of one of the guys who really uses the clinch from a Muay Thai perspective very well. Trips guys a lot, looks for knees. You already mentioned Demetrius Johnson. What I really like about Demetrius Johnson is that, there's this thing in MMA where people are focused on pulling the head down to knee it. But if you can just lock grips on the head so that you're locked onto the guy, and if you can then just bring your knee up to their head, you're just as good. You're set, basically. And that's what Demetrius Johnson does so well. He'll slap on either a double collar tie, or he'll be fighting from like a single collar tie or something like that. And the guy will be standing straight upright, and Demetrius Johnson will still bring his knee up and catch the guy in the chin or the temple or something. Hip flexibility is so important for being able to attack from the clinch. Alistair Overeem has a couple of really nice combinations from the clinch for striking. One of the ones that I really like is that he'll drive a really hard knee into the inside thigh to knock the opponent's leg out. And as their leg flies out, they bend forward, and he'll try and knee them in the sternum as they're bent over. I think he used that against Travis Brown, but he definitely used it against Paul Buntello. One of the best things in MMA that you're rarely treated to. If Alistair Overeem actually gets a guy to the fence, you're like, oh, he's actually going to do it this time. It's going to be so good. I think the Muay Thai clinch, from an MMA perspective, is pretty similar to what we were saying about the triangle earlier and submissions in general. If you unbalance the guy first, you can follow up with strikes better. If you strike first, you can follow up with unbalancing techniques better. It's flowing the two together, and guys are often seen fixated on one. If you like your Muay Thai clinch, there's a fighter, later coach called Pot. Can't remember his full name, but he trained with I found him by Saenchai training clips, and he's just manhandling Saenchai. It's awesome to watch. But one of his very last fights is on YouTube. And he's sort of getting to be an old fat man at the time, but he was very famous as a clinch fighter. I think they're called Muay Khao. There's different names for basically what you do. Is Muay Khao a knee fighter? Can't remember. Basically, he's just walking in on this other Thai who's kicking at him, and every time they get to the clinch, he'll push straight on the guy's face and then let the hand slide off and connect the elbow, like the old Jeremy Horn elbow on the ground. But he does it so many times that it looks really painful. Got another question about the guard this week. Dear Gentleman Jack, I am curious about your take on the state of guard play in MMA, specifically in terms of the metagame. There appears to be an emerging mindset in MMA that you simply do not win fights from your back, and you should not be trying to set up submissions for more than 30 seconds or so. After that, the fighter should be frantically trying to get to their feet. I think this mirrors the skill sets and training that have been emphasized in anti-wrestling, a la Daniel Cormier, killing guards and setting up basic jiu-jitsu submissions like the rear naked chokes. However, I see many openings for a skilled jiu-jitsu fighter to set up submissions, particularly during scrambles and transitions, even against high-level wrestlers. Mackenzie Dern's recent fight illustrates how a high-level jiu-jitsu player can, from their back, make life miserable for a controlling top player. Other jiu-jitsu-based grapplers like Ben Saunders and Verdum have used their guard or the threat of the guard to keep the fight where they want it. It seems to me with the limited time the fighters have to train and develop their skills, high-level guard games are not deemed worth bothering with by prospective fighters. What are your thoughts? Is the high-level guard game reserved to sports BJJ, or do you think we will be seeing a resurgence in the coming years? Is it really so awful to spend a couple of minutes on your back and potentially give away part of a round? Maybe I am biased because seeing a finishing sequence from the back always seems like the most impressive way to end a fight. Thanks for all the great podcasting work, from Jonathan. Yeah, I mean, that's linking back to what we just said about Daniel Cormier and people like that not putting in the hooks and just trying to stay on top at all costs. Guys who are training MMA are grappling every day, or close to it. And most gyms, you either start from the feet, or if you are taking a lazy day and you're starting from the ground, most people alternate turns on top. So guys are training off their backs plenty. I think it doesn't help that the gi game is also so important to a lot of top-level jiu-jitsu guys. Most of the submissions you see from the guard from high-level jiu-jitsu players in jiu-jitsu are done with the gi jacket. It's spider guard stuff. Most of the passes are done standing, so that really is more to do with the De La Riva and the reverse De La Riva game, which aren't really submission-based games, especially no gi. You're talking about coming up on the single or attempting roll under sweeps, kiss of the dragon, whatever they are. Attacking position, trying to get underneath people, rather than attacking submissions, which tend to be upper body affairs. You'll see the occasional knee bar. Calf slicer, even the calf slicer nowadays is mainly used as a sweep as an attempt to take the back. Xiao Miao is fantastic at that. And he has an amazing name too, Xiao Miao. Sensual name. Mind you, he might have just got tired of his hands being fucked all the time. If you see a photo of the Miao brothers' hands, it puts you off playing Spider Guard for life. You mentioned Ben Saunders. He's an interesting example because he's a rubber guard player, and anytime you talk about rubber guard, it gets a bit gimmicky. You know, I don't want to be like, oh, rubber guard is amazing, there's just not enough guys trying it. But what I do like about the rubber guard for MMA is that one of the most annoying things for the top player in close guard in MMA is the elbows to the top of the head. You know, Chad Mendes against Conor McGregor, that was all Conor McGregor was doing. And Chad Mendes was like, those are illegal. And the referee was going, no, they're not illegal. You know, and if a guy's appealing about that, it means he's getting hurt by them. Or they're at least putting him off what he's trying to do. And the thing about the 10th Planet guard game is that because you're using your legs and one forearm in front of the collarbone, or, you know, in front of the shoulders, you basically lock the guy in place in your guard, and you freed one hand to work. So I can't remember who Ben Saunders fought, but he like trapped him in a whatever rubber guard position it was, either invisible collar or muddy waters or whatever they're calling it. And he's just raining elbows from underneath on this guy. And those are the sort of guards that I feel are going to put people off chilling in the guard. Whereas if you're just attempting submissions or sweeps or stand-ups, the guy's going to be happy to just stay on top of you. The thing about elbows to the head is that they do convince the guy that he doesn't want to be there, especially because they're quite low effort. You know, you can just keep chucking them out, and the guy doesn't get that break that he's attempted that big triangle or that sweep into the triangle attempt, or an arm bar came close, but now I'm out, and he's not going to attempt that for a while because he showed me his hand, and two, he's probably tired from the first attempt. There's no sort of weathering the storm with elbows to the top of the head. And I'm always cautious about like advocating that too much because as a guy who loves the striking game, I understand that the consensus in jiu-jitsu is that the working from your back is not a striking position, but that one strike seems so effective, the downward elbow. Well, it's not really a downward elbow in terms of gravity, but it's downward in terms of from the top of your head to your toes. Yeah, I mean, the dangerous thing with people like Mackenzie Dern and stuff like that is that they are fighting essentially nobodies. Like, Crone Gracie pulled guard on a guy in his first fight, and everyone went, oh, pulling guard's coming back. And you're like, no, he's not going to be able to do that to, like, I don't know, who's a lightweight outside of the UFC that he might fight eventually. Well, he's fighting Kawajiri next, which is a rough one. You know, maybe he can submit Kawajiri from the guard, which would be super impressive, because Kawajiri